And the third team we will be previewing for the County Chat Division 2 preview is the representatives of Wales in the County Championship. It is Glamorgan. They came 6th in Division 2 last year, or 3rd to last, depending on how you look at it. They won the One Day Cup, much like Gloucestershire, had a bad red ball season, but they did do very well in the white ball format and won the One Day Cup, which was huge for them. But yeah, Glamorgan, another team with some leadership changes. Coach Grant Bradburn has been sacked for racist and sexist comments made during the season and after an inquiry by the ECB, which has been a part of the new inclusion sort of push in the ECB, which has been really effective, and Glamorgan apparently did very well in sort of handling that whole affair. But replacing him will be Richard Dawson in an interim role. They do keep the same captain though, with Sam Northeast remaining in the role. I would say compared to the two teams that we've previewed so far, Glamorgan had a bit more of a ambiguous weakness between the two phases of the game, whether the batting or the bowling was maybe more of a weakness. The idea being that I've been starting off with the weaknesses of all these teams. Though if you were to pick between the two phases of the game, again, I think it would be the bowling. I think there's a bit of a obvious connection there between teams that struggle and their bowling being a big issue, because I think, quite frankly, it's really important. You know, batting can put you well ahead in the red ball game, but if you can't take those 20 wickets, you can't win the game. I mean, it's a simple thing, but it's not like white ball cricket where you can limit the runs and all of that sort of things. You do need to take those 20 wickets. So that bowling lineup does need to be very effective and very, has a lot of ability to take wickets. Anyway, the bowling lineup will be again led by the impressive Tim van der Hoogten. He had another very good season in the games he played. He took 21 wickets in the 7 matches he played, as I said. A very good, good averages and just a very good performer for Glamorgan over a long period of time. He'll be supported, as he was last year, by Harris and Gorvin, these two medium pacers. Particularly Gorvin last year had a breakout season, taking 24 wickets at an average of 23. And again, Harris is a very much a sort of lower order bowling all-rounder type who is just very consistent, a kind of consistent performer in Division 2 of County Championship cricket. Jamie McElroy will be looking to return into the format of red ball cricket after an impressive white ball campaign, part of that team that went on to win the One Day Cup, but really in all the County Championship performances he had, he didn't perform particularly well, nor did he particularly, stick around. He only played in 2 games. The permanent signing of Ned Leonard from Somerset will be a plus for this bowling lineup, especially because I think that bowling lineup, those 3 names, they kind of closer to 30 or north of 30 than most bowling lineups you'll see, and as we know, seam bowling for the most part is a thing which is, it's a young man's game, often is said, unless you're Jimmy Anderson, but for the most part people struggle to sort of stick around for a longer period of time than that. But Ned Leonard, I don't know if he quite fixes that problem. He is young, but his bowling average of 66 wouldn't inspire any confidence for maybe this coming season that he'll be a big standout star, if you will. A boost though for Glamorgan's seam bowling unit is the signing of Asista Fernando from the Sri Lankan overseas. Incredibly skillful, has shown himself to be a bit able to take wickets in English conditions, having had a successful tour of England last season, or I should say British conditions, as we are talking about Glamorgan here. But yeah, he's a very talented player, and I'm sure will help their bowling no end. And yeah, Dan Douthwaite, another player who had a very good one day cup, will looking to continue from his steady improvements in red ball cricket. And yeah, we'll look for a big breakout, especially with the ball, because again, they need that help in it. Batting all-rounder Zain Al Hassan will be looking to supplement his talents with the bat, with some medium-paced wickets. He bowled an impressive 80 overs without a wicket last year in red ball cricket, which I can't imagine is a record, but it's got to be up there. I genuinely think, not to be harsh on Zayn's bowling here, that is quite an impressive thing to do. I'm a pretty average bowler, but I don't think I would, it's quite hard to bowl 80 overs without taking a wicket. Sorry, I've just, really laid in on him there. I do think he's a very good bowler. I more mean it in the sense of I'm sure he will take more wickets this year, just a sort of law of averages kind of thing. But the headline for Glamorgan, I'd say, in their bowling department in general, is they've got a 3-match loan spell of the sort of England's new spin bowling darling of Shoaib Bashir. Yeah, the centrally contracted bowler. He is in that weird situation at Somerset where he's behind Jack Leach, but also ahead of him for England, behind him for Somerset in terms of like the pecking order. yeah, he's had a tough sort of last year, Bashir. He had the big year, first year in red ball cricket where he took a lot of wickets, 50 in Test match cricket, I think, which was one of the best sort of ever at the time. But yeah, in recent series, in places where spin bowling has been helpful for England, he's really struggled in Pakistan and places like that. So yeah, he'll be looking to show his sort of attributes which made him England's first choice spinner to begin with. I mean, again, he has struggled in pre-season. I think Cardiff UCCE had a good go at him, unfortunately. So yeah, he'll be looking to really take some wickets in those early season games to again really establish himself to like why do England think he's a really talented cricketer and is going to be the bowler who goes to the Ashes, etc. It's a big season for Bashir, and I think his start with Glamorgan will be a big deal. It works pretty much perfectly because basically their frontline spinner in Mason Crane is out up until the first 3 games with a shoulder injury. I mean, Crane is one of those players who, he was again similar to Bashir, he was sort of thrown into the deep end of international cricket and really struggled, but he has always been tipped for sort of a high level of performance, and it's because, quite simply, he can spin a leg spinner quite big and he can bowl good variations. But the reality is, at this point of his career, his first class average still falls at around 43. 2024 again being a pretty similar season to that end. So yeah, he'll hope for a big season, and Glamorgan will be hoping a big season when he returns from that injury. But again, shoulder injuries and spin bowling is kind of always a bit of a worry. Ask people like Graham Swan or anyone really who's had a long career in spin bowling, shoulders can go quite quickly. So we'll hopefully for his sake, he will be able to, Mason Crane will be able to turn around that. On the other end, though, a young spinner who's looking to keep going from his promising last year was Ben Kellaway. He took 12 wickets at an average of 22. It was a very small sample size across 4 matches, but again, a promising start for any off spinner or any spinner at all. It's just, get yourself in the door, get yourself a few wickets whilst the main spinner might be out, or you might be playing 2. He did exactly that, so he'll be looking to sort of burst through the door, if you will. Batter Kieran Carlson, who's a real, great operator for the team for Glamorgan, that he'll be looking to keep offering up his offies, I guess, and keep being a reason for their success. But yeah, the lack of young seam bowling was my main concern when it came to Glamorgan. Again, I think their spin bowling, they've got quite a few options and quite a few young players in that area, especially Ben Kellaway, and even Mason Crane's not particularly long in the tooth himself, but the young seam bowling is a problem. I think for the future, maybe less than 2025, but they will be looking for some young seamers. And I think, to be fair, they were a club that I saw had a sort of open trials recently for seam bowlers, because I think they're aware that is somewhere they just need more depth, if anything. As we saw with Gloucestershire last year, they really struggled with the injury bug, which happens very easily for seam bowling units. Anyway, the Glamorgan's batting lineup is a very strong one as well. I mean, it is built around their 3, 4, 5 area. Their middle order, or middle to top order, is as good as it gets in Division 2. I sort of put it here as a 3-headed monster in Sam Northeast, Colin Ingram and Kieran Carlson. The openers are a little less settled. William Root, i.e. Billy Root, I didn't know his name was William actually, until I'm again researching this video, and the aforementioned Zayn Al Hassan, Asa Tribe and Eddie Byram will all be kind of fighting for those opening slots. I think it most likely would be Zayn Al Hassan and Eddie Byram to kick off the season. I think Billy Root had a pretty tough season opening the innings last year, so I think it would be most likely to be those two, but they'll be looking for just a more consistent partnership, a more consistent amount of runs from their openers. Though it was well accounted for with their top to middle order. As I say, North East scored 1,000 runs very, very, easily, it seemed like. Colin Ingram even more so, scored 1,351 runs, led the division. He averaged 90. I mean, you could talk about those numbers for days and days. I mean, it's just unfathomably good, and even if he brushes that, it will be a very, very good season. But Colin Ingram, just always seems like he's going to dominate Division 2 bowling, and he kind of does quite consistently. Kieran Carlson himself scored 923 runs, so I mean, nothing to sniff at for your number 5. A really strong season. So again, those 3 alone, to quickly do some maths, it's a roughly 3,500 runs that they've put together as a 3, and I mean that is going to be good enough for a lot of good teams. Just a fun quick point on North East season, he scored 522 of that 1,000 run season in 2 innings, because he scored 335 in an early game at Lords, and then he scored at 187 in another innings. So yeah, he scored 52% of his runs in 2 innings. I just thought it's a fun how cricket works sort of vibe. It just is one of those weird things. And again, yeah, the constructed around that middle order. They've got Chris Cook, who over the last decade or so has been one of the most consistent performers with the bat in all of county cricket. He is 38 though, and had a slight down year from his kind of averages, but it's still, for a wicketkeeper batsman, averaging 30, nearly 600 runs is nothing to sniff at. But he could do even better for this Glamorgan batting lineup. They've got a couple of new signings in a local lad, Callum Nichols, who's had a very good local seasons in both Australia and in South Wales, so hopefully he'll be looking to sort of break into that team. But as I mentioned, it's kind of opener or bust for the young players who are trying to get crack into the batting lineup because of how settled those 3 are at the top of the lineup. And yeah, another person I mentioned there, Will Smale, over 2 games looked quite settled when he got a chance to bat. So yeah, overseas signings are positive. As I said, Asista Fernando sort of fits those English and Welsh conditions very well in the early season of April and May. Colin Ingram, as I said, is as good of an overseas signing as you get, because it's just consistent. You just know what you're going to get from him. Last year was particularly a high, but it would not surprise me if he easily goes past that 1,000-run mark. Another thing I noticed was that Marnus Labuschagne hasn't been announced for Glamorgan this season, but again, similar to Cameron Green, they are going to be playing in that World Test Championship final. And having done a bit of snooping on Glamorgan's website, his player profile is still there. Whether or not that's because he's got sort of an unwritten agreement, or maybe a written agreement that kind of he can play for them as and when, or maybe they just haven't updated their website and he isn't in for that season. Who knows? But yeah, Glamorgan will, like all the teams of starting off these previews, will be looking to turn around their form in the Red Bull game. I think their batting lineup, as I've said, is easily good enough to mix it up with the top of the division and top of the table. I think, again, the openers will worry them, but I think their young talent at the top of the order and people like Billy Root do have the ability to open the top of innings. It is a specialist skill. I think it's becoming a diminishingly a specialist skill, but it is a specialist skill at the top of that lineup. But I think the thing limiting most teams at the bottom of the lineup, as I've said throughout, is that ability to take the 20 wickets. You can draw a lot of games in county cricket, but if you can get bowlers to get you those 20 wickets to win your games, it's going to be a big deal. And I think to begin with, they'll be in a good place, because they'll have Asista Fernando, they'll have Shoaib Bashir, so they should be looking to try and pick up points, especially early on in that season. With those two, because I think Bashir, especially in a Division 2 standard, I think should be able to dominate. But again, a big moment for his career. A little predicted lineup sort of thing, early season lineup again, because Fernando and Bashir will leave after a while. But I say Eddie Byam and Zain Al Hassan are probably likely to open that batting. Sam Northeastern captain will be 3, as I said, Colin Ingram 4, Carlson 5, and Cook at 6. I had it as probably Dan Douthwaite will fit in that all-rounder slot at 7. Harris will come in at 8, Tim van der Hoekten will come 9, and then Shoaib Bashir in at 10, and Asista Fernando at 11. Yeah, I think they're a good sign. Aside for Glamorgan, I think they could move up the table. Whether or not they will or not, I think it's down to their strength and depth. I don't know if they have the bowling lineup to really push up the table. I think they have the batting lineup, as I say. I think they're good enough to do very well and score a lot of runs. I just don't know if they've got the wicket-taking ability to win a lot of games in the Division 2. So that is my roundup of Glamorgan. Thanks for watching.